Align is a podcast for the awakened soul, where we get real on all things spirituality and navigating the human experience. Let's dive in. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to today's podcast episode where we're going to dive deep into the good, the bad, and the ugly on all things healing, self-love, trauma, and inner child work. Remember that healing is not a linear process, and it looks different for every single human because we all have a different starting line. You entered this incarnation with potential past life trauma, karma to balance, karmic lessons to master, and the quote unquote stuff you're carrying in your DNA from your ancestral line, not to mention any wounds and conditionings from this lifetime. No wonder that healing can feel so overwhelming and deep. If you're on this journey, you might have experienced moments where you feel like you are healing the wrong way, or that you're going backwards, or that the spiritual principles like manifestation can't work for you. But the truth is that every single human on this journey has had moments that might feel like stagnation or defeat. And that's what we're really diving into today. If this content resonates, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so that you're always notified when we upload a new episode or healing to the platform. And now it's time to dive on in. Today, I have with me Dana Marcelle to help guide us through this beautiful discussion. Dana is a certified QHHT hypnotherapist with a background in psychology and metaphysics. She's wildly talented, beautiful, and just an awesome soul to be around. Dana, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. How are you?
I am good, Crystal. Thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to do this episode with you because I know that anytime that we connect, it's like we could just sit here and talk for hours and hours. So at least
Yes,
today we can do that with purpose, right?
right. Absolutely.
Dana, do you mind sharing with our audience just a bit on why you chose the topic that you wanted to talk about today?
Oh gosh, I think for a multitude of reasons. But you said it best when you said healing is not linear. And I think that oftentimes we can get discouraged when we feel like we have jumped over a hurdle and we've healed from something in our life, and then all of a sudden something else comes along our
Yes.
way and we feel like, oh my God, did I even heal? And so I think it is important to kind of bring that to the forefront of everybody's mind that is on the spiritual journey.
You know, it's so interesting because I've had so many women ask me, when will I be done healing? Or how do I know if I've healed? So, what would you say to women that have those questions or people in general that might be on this journey and ponder those types of questions?
Yeah, so my first comment would be healing is just never done. um, I think that rather than make ourselves feel bad about that and make it feel so big, we need to refocus and find the small wins in that, because while healing is never done, it still is, we still heal and move forward. So like we can sit back and reflect on our past selves and see how our current selves have handled things differently, right? And that's where you find
Yes.
how much you have really healed. Um, and I think that I think those times of reflection are important to keep that forward trajectory for sure.
It's reflection and celebrating our wins,
Yes.
which
Yes.
so many people forget to do, right? It's so easy to
Yep.
fall back into a lack-based mindset where we pick ourselves apart and we notice all the things that we feel like we're still not doing the right way.
Yep.
And we
Yep.
forget about the old version of us versus who we are and how far we've come.
Yeah. And I think most recently for myself, I have found that, we often hear in the spiritual world, we talk about holding space. And so what does that actually mean, right? And I think a part of any aspect of the healing journey is to learn to hold space for yourself. And that means during those transition times, just being okay, not knowing what to do next, being okay, being overwhelmed, and just kind of sitting in that and allowing yourself the grace to feel shitty some days.
You mentioned holding space and learning how to hold space for ourselves when we're going through this process. And it makes me think so much of inner child work, because
Mhm.
a lot of people don't really understand how to heal their wounded inner child, or they might not even realize, like, hey, every single person has an inner child, right? That's not the question of do you have one or not. The question is your inner child wounded, or is your inner
Mhm.
child not wounded? So, what has been your experience with inner child work, and how has that played a role in your journey?
Oh my goodness. I I think it's, and now this has been cultivated over the last several years, but when I first started looking at the inner child work, I felt guilty because I felt like I was blaming my parents for things that they did or didn't do, or just for being the humans that they are. And what I've learned over those years through research and just my own reflection is it's not about placing blame on them. It's about recognizing their humanness, and the limitations and the wounds that they had as they raised me. And then taking that and allowing myself, my inner child that was hurt and wounded, to feel hurt, okay, feeling the hurt. And to just accept my parents and their humanness, but also accept that I was hurting, and I was hurt by, what they did, said, or what have you, and that's okay. But that acknowledgement probably has been my biggest lesson. I can still have a great relationship with my folks and still heal and recognize that things hurt me.
Thank you for bringing that up,
Mm.
because I've had this conversation with so many women over the years where they feel bad. They feel like they're talking negatively upon their parents or their caregivers, or that they're saying that they are bad people. And so if you're listening to this right now, it is so important for you to remember a couple of things. Number one, you can't heal what you're not aware of. So if you are not open enough to admit that you might have been wounded in your childhood, or in even an earlier time in your adulthood, right? It doesn't matter when. But if you're not ready to admit that it was there, or you are so wrapped up in self gaslighting, where you are constantly minimizing your own pain and minimizing your own emotions, you are going to struggle to heal it, because you
Mm.
can't heal what you're not aware of. And the second part, when we think about our parents or our caregivers, the reality is that good, well-intended people make unhealthy choices. That
Yes.
just is what it is. Dana, I know you've made unhealthy choices. I've
Yep.
made unhealthy choices. Every single person listening to this has done the same at some point. And we're not saying that we ourselves are bad people. And so we have to learn how to remove the people from the behaviors, right? Two
Yes.
totally different things.
Yeah, and that was beautifully said because through that recognition and doing this work, I actually repaired my relationship with my parents internally. And so externally, it became better with them as well. And I know that I have boundaries I've had to set. And I never even had to verbalize that. I just set them within myself. But
Yes.
I love them on a different level now, with much more appreciation for how they raised me and the reasoning behind a lot of things. And so it really blossomed into a much better relationship.
I love that you just said that you set those boundaries within yourself and you didn't
Yeah.
even need to communicate them. Now, I want to caveat here, like sometimes we do need to, right? But
Yes.
your healing is an unspoken thing. And so if
Yes.
you just start to heal, people notice that change in you. And that is how you shift the health of your relationships, by shifting
Mhm.
yourself, because you teach other people how to set
Yes.
boundaries or how to break codependency, which I know you and I have talked in depth about
Yes.
codependency over the years.
Yes.
So, unfortunately, as you and I are talking about the quote unquote positive side of this, where we are able to make those shifts, sometimes we might face our wounded inner child and embark on this healing journey, but have parents that are resisting it. Where
Mhm.
maybe even if we're not blaming them, they are still taking things personally, and it is activating their ego because they still haven't healed. what would be your recommendation or guidance or coaching for people that might be going through that experience?
I would I would ask yourself if you're in your healing, those boundaries are being maybe overspoken. And I say that only because I personally went through that. So when I first started this, I'm going to set these boundaries. I know this and that and the other thing hurt me, so I felt like I needed to verbally say that to my parents. And so their reaction then was on the defensive, because now they felt like I was saying they were wrong or bad or what have you. And I think that is the time that I had to pull back my energy back to baseline. And then I understood it's not about telling them my boundaries, it's about living them. So rather than saying, Mom, I'm not telling you anything about my personal life because, X, Y, and Z tends to happen, it's just simply not sharing. And they, like you said, the internal and the external, then they just kind of fall in line accordingly.
I want to repeat something that you just said. It's not about telling them my boundaries, it's about living them.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is embodiment. This is what we call integration, because we can learn this information all day long and we can talk about it, but if we don't actually, right, walk the walk,
Yeah.
eat our own
Right.
cooking, integrate it into our lives, then it's not doing
Yes.
us any good. That really stood
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. And even, to add to that, I feel like years ago, I had been that person that was just taking in the information and learning all the things. I'm a big avid reader, but it wasn't until I realized that the implementation piece is what actually pushed me over the positive trajectory to the healing, right? And living it. That's the key.
Yeah, it really is. Because even at the start of our conversation just a few minutes ago, when we were talking about how healing is a forever journey, that is when it can become this daunting thing. If we look at it like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be done healing. Instead, this is again another mindset shift. The way that I like to look at it is it's just a new way of living. It's
Right.
not like you're never done healing. It's that it has just become your version of your everyday life, where your goal is to wake up every day and just be the healthiest version of you. And if you're continuously doing that, it's going to snowball. And of course, the natural result is that the version of you today is going to be healthier than the version of you yesterday. And the version of you
Absolutely.
tomorrow, right, will be even better, and it will continue. That is ascension, everyone.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
ascension. We're just breaking it down into a different way to be able to look at it.
And honestly, breaking it down into those bite-sized pieces removes the overwhelm of I'm
Yes.
never going to be done.
Absolutely. So, I know that the topic of self-love is something that's near and dear to your heart. And we also know that self-love is tied to inner child wounds.
Yes.
So, talk to me a little bit around your journey of self-love and how, it's manifested and evolved for you over the years.
Well, I think we hear things that say self-love and self-care. And first I'd like to point out that self-love is different than self-care. Self-care are things that you do to love yourself, right? And so I got kind of stuck on the self-care piece and not understanding that connection. So I felt like, well, I'm going to have a spa day today and that'll make me feel better. But what I wasn't identifying at the time was I had done 14 different things that day to abandon myself
Hmm.
or to not trust myself. And so that band-aid of self-care that I was putting on really wasn't doing anything for me. So when I started then looking at, okay, I'm recognizing I have abandonment wounds, I betrayal wounds, and then digging into the meat of where those started coming from, the root causes, which of course comes from childhood. I was starting to see how they played out in my everyday current life over the years, relationships, how I raised my own kids, the jobs that I took, and I was able then to say, okay, so I know I've got this core wound. How am I going to start healing that? And I just started chipping away and chipping away little bit by little bit by little bit, sitting in times of void and utter depression, and then having a breakthrough moment and coming through, and then kind of just tackling it little by little by little.
You mentioned abandoning yourself.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because just yesterday, I had a call with the women in my community, and this topic came up, and we were talking a lot about self-sacrifice.
Yes.
And oftentimes that can be a learned behavior, right? So in childhood, we might watch other family members engage in self-abandonment and self-sacrifice, or it might be done to us where we are told that we need to be responsible for the feelings of our parents, or we're made responsible or caregivers for our siblings. So do you mind sharing a little bit, Dana, on like your personal journey with self-abandonment and self-sacrifice and how that was showing up for you as an adult before you started healing yourself and of course healing other women too?
Yeah, I did not realize until probably year and a half ago that the self-sacrifice and the self-abandonment was a learned behavior. And it was a learned behavior from my my grandparents. Um, they they were alcoholics and just not kind to the kids growing up. And so my dad then had codependent behaviors because that's how he grew up. And then I started kind of mapping that out into how I started having the same codependency because that's how I learned to be. And it just backwards, right? And then so I realized, okay, well, that means that this isn't me. If this is a learned behavior, this is not really truly who I
Yes.
am. And then I took it further and said, okay, where in my life have I been abandoning myself? And I walked myself through every single relationship that I've had. And I thought, holy cow,
Mhm.
therein lies that problem within me. And then I've recently been married last year and started noticing things kind of patterning again. And I really started taking a long, hard look at myself, harder than before, right? Because prior to this, it was, well, dad was raised that way and he raised me that way. Prior to this, I really looked at my responsibility within my relationship and what I needed to do to fix it. And I realized I was looking externally for a lot of things, validation, confidence. It was all, I was looking to my husband for all these things. And that was wearing on him. Right. And so I thought one day I woke up and I was like, I'm abandoning myself. Where do I need to validate myself? Where do
Yes.
I need to make make sure I feel okay about whatever situation? And I started taking responsibility for that. And so I started validating myself. I started building my self-esteem and my confidence in ways that I were far deeper than I'd ever really done before. And it just was the snowball effect. It slowly started. I noticed differences and healing, and that was kind of the progression.
It's so interesting too, because you're talking a lot about responsibility, which I love. I used to mention a lot, like shifting from or learning how to shift from a blame to an accountability mindset, because the human ego loves to notice what we don't like or what we feel dissatisfied with in our relationships or in money or whatever it is, and then instantly look at all of the things that we think everybody else needs to change. So it would
Yes.
be so easy in those circumstances to look at your husband and say, oh, he's not doing X, Y, and Z, and that's why I'm feeling this way. And that just continues to snowball. But that's the opposite of how spiritual and energetic healing works, right? Our outside, our external reality, our money, our relationships, our career, our purpose, it is a mirror to what is happening inside of us. And until we learn that and until we shift what's happening inside of us, it does not matter, right?
No.
Nobody is ever going to be able to make us happy because that's a
Yes.
thing. we are responsible for making ourselves happy.
Yes. And I tell you, when you start to experience that, it is magic.
Yes,
I mean, magic really happens there when you start to take the responsibility for yourself and then see the external kind of snowball in the positive direction with it. It is absolute, it's alchemy. It's
it
beautiful.
is.
Yeah.
And
And
oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say for our listeners, if you are having this experience, and it applies to all areas of life, but thinking about relationships, you're going to see one of two things happen as you heal. If you keep the focus on yourself, even if you have high conflict relationships or relationships that are struggling, one of two things is going to happen. Number one, either the health of the relationship is going to improve because you are improving, and a natural result will be you are healing the people that you are in the relationships with, or you are going to teach them the new way to engage with you. And naturally, everything's going to shift and you're going to end up with the relationship of your dreams. Or number two, it will be determined that that's a karmic relationship. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about intimate relationships, friendships, colleagues, what have you. It'll show that it's a karmic relationship and you will energetically attract your soul tribe into your life.
Yes.
And so if you just focus on being your healthiest you're going to get all of the relationships that you could have ever dreamt of.
Yes. And the self-abandonment piece to that, I just recently experienced my my contribution to the issues had been I'm putting everybody before me, putting my husband before me, his needs, but also at the same time picking at though his needs for change and growth and whatnot without acknowledging my own. And so I released control. Control is it's a bugger.
It's part of that codependent cycle.
It is, and I just stopped. I just thought whatever happens, happens. Either we're gonna grow together, we're gonna heal through this and be stronger, and this is one of those soul contracts that's gonna last a lifetime, or this is going to be that karmic connection that's gonna teach me X, Y, and Z. It's gonna teach him X, Y, and Z, and we're gonna part ways. And once I really felt that release of the need to control, things started happening and things started happening in the right direction. And I stopped abandoning myself. I've always needed to feel safe for a multitude of reasons. Women in general, that's a big thing for us. But from my own childhood wounding, I needed to feel safe. I needed to feel loved. And I started asking myself, how can I make myself safe? And I started taking those steps to make myself safe rather than looking to my husband to be my protector and safekeeper, right? But magically, once I started doing those things, he started responding differently as well.
Yeah.
And it started to, again, we talked about that snowball. It started to go into the right direction. And I was driving one day and I thought to myself, holy crap, just what seems so simple of I had to do this one thing to make myself feel safe. And he got it and he followed in suit, you know? And it was beautiful. And so I
Well, and two, it's so interesting because as you're saying all this, it makes me think back to the analogy that I used to use. You might have heard me talk about this one before, where I talk about boundaries in the form of imagine if you have children and you every single night on a school night let them stay up until midnight and have ice cream as a snack right before they go to bed. Super unhealthy, right? But that's what you're letting them do. And then all of a sudden you decide you're going to implement healthier habits in the home. And so you say, okay, we're going to trade the ice cream for carrot sticks and we're going to start going to bed at 7 instead of 12. What's going to happen? Your kids are going to be like, WTF? No, give me my ice cream back. Why do I have to go to bed at 7? They are going to have a tantrum. Of course they are, because you are literally changing the rules of the game. But if you stay consistent and you continue to explain the why behind it and how it's beneficial and how it's healthier, and you lead by example, Eventually, they will adjust to the new bedtime and they will go upstairs and they will brush their teeth and get ready, whatever that might be, right? Silly example, but what I want everyone to remember is that you teach other people how to treat you by how you treat yourself. And so going back to this topic of self-love, if you are lacking self-love, you are not going to be able to attract healthy love because it all
Yes.
comes back to what's inside of you.
Yes. And I am a firm believer that anything done out of love will be received by the right person with love. I think that, as we go through and we set these boundaries and show people how to treat us based off of how we treat ourselves in the healthy way, the right people are going to respond positively.
Yeah.
And the wrong people are going to see their way out of your life. And it may hurt, but I think when everything is done out of love, the universe is not going to throw a negative curveball at us because that's just not how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever heard of the book Mother Hunger?
No.
Okay. My community of women and I are reading this right now. And if you are listening in on this, if you resonate with having a mother wound, or if you are a mother, or if you are in the position of helping others, whether you are a coach, a healer, a therapist, a mental health professional, what have you, you have got to read this book. And in this book, the author talks about so much of what we're talking about and how it all starts in childhood because our mother is the one that teaches us what love should feel like. And then if we grow up and we have skewed visions of what love is supposed to feel like, or we're struggling to attract healthy love, or we're engaging in unhealthy behaviors, we can trace it back to our childhood, right?
Mhm.
And things that happened either to or around us when we were children that formed those patterns.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I wrote the name down. I'm going to read it.
Yeah, it's so good. So I know that hypnosis is
Uh,
like your favorite modality ever.
yes.
How did you get into hypnotherapy and how do you use hypnotherapy to resolve some of the things that we're talking about?
Oh gosh, how did I get into it? Well, we were working together
Mm.
and I I think I can't remember the timeline here, but I can't remember if you did a hypno session with me first, and then I was like, wow, what is this? And how do I get more? Or if it was before that. But that session for me, I still have the recording and I still have revisited to listen to it multiple times. It was so profound for me. I think that you really getting into the subconscious mind, you've got to get your conscious mind out of the way, get your ego out of the way. And when you can rest and relax in your authenticity, things come out, the good things and the higher power that is within us is able to come through and guide us where we need guidance.
Yeah.
And so I think that once I kind of got a taste of the power of that, I wanted to be able to offer that same healing to other people. And the QHHT piece, quantum healing hypnotherapy, was developed by Dolores Cannon. I'm a huge fan of hers in general. And so once I started reading more of her books, and then you and I had our session, I was thinking to myself, how do I get all of that? And I came on to I found her program, and so that's how it got started. I can't say enough good things about it.
It really is so, so amazing. I preach the importance of sleep hypnosis all
Yes,
the time because why not? You spend so much of your time as a human sleeping. Why
yes,
not capitalize on that and allow
right.
yourself to heal when you are in a rested state? And I'll share too, for those of you who are out there, if you feel like you are living in trauma, or maybe you're not living in trauma, but you're living in a state of constant stress or overwhelm, then hypnotherapy is a really great tool for you because it's going to help you to heal, help you to achieve that window of tolerance that is so important for that healing to be able to take place.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. What final thoughts do you have, or what else would you like to share that you feel like it's important for our listeners to hear on the things we've talked about today?
I think through the self-love journey, I think the other piece of the mind-body connection that I love is somatics. And so our body, our intuition will tell us when we are walking into a situation that is not meant for us or people that are not meant for us. Our body will tell us. We just have to learn how to listen to it. And so that somatic practice is beautiful because you will take your trauma and you will be able to channel it differently out and through your body, really, and then be able to recognize in the future as you heal when situations are going to be a patterned cycle that you know you don't want to get into. And so I final thought to add is that somatics really level up the healing journey.
And so important, especially if we fall into the bucket of trauma cycling
Yes.
or have a dysregulated nervous system where we might be in a pattern of attracting everything that we don't want or
Yep,
attracting more
absolutely.
of the same. That way we can protect ourselves and break those karmic lessons.
Yes, and just rid ourselves of all those trapped emotions
Yeah,
that like to linger around and really wreak havoc on our physical body.
absolutely. I don't
Mhm.
think a lot of people really understand, the impact that those trapped emotions or the trapped energy can have, and that is
Right.
what causes physical illness, amongst,
Yep,
of course,
I
many other
agree.
things.
Yep, that's another I could go on about that forever
I
too.
know. A whole other episode on that one.
Yes. Yes.
So, Dana, what's the best way for our listeners to get into touch with you and to learn more about what it is that you do?
Absolutely. My Facebook page, Dana Marcelle Coaching and Hypnotherapy, is the best way to book an appointment, to just have a chat and to scroll through my content.
Amazing. And for everyone listening, I'm going to put all of Dana's information and the direct links in the description box right below this episode so that you'll easily have it. Absolutely check her out. I will say that she is a fantastic hypnotherapist. You truly, oh my gosh, you got the evidence immediately that this was the place that you were supposed to be, because every single time that you would facilitate a session, the experiences that people were having were just so profound. So
Yes,
if you've never experienced hypnotherapy before, definitely explore it and learn more about Dana and what she does.
absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining. And everyone, thank you for tuning in today. Let us know how you're feeling, what came up for you, what questions you have in the comments below, and we will chat with you soon.